Hi, and welcome to SCW Rewind. Going back in the time vault once again, going to be reviewing a retro show. And today's one is an anniversary. That's right, it's the 25th anniversary of Bash at the Beach from WCW in 1996, where Hulk Hogan betrays WCW and we get the birth of the NWO. I'm going to be joined by Non-Stop Wrestling Chat very shortly, but first off, we're going to be getting things straight after this. So welcome to the show, everybody. It's good to have you all on board. And Non-Stop Wrestling Chat is with me. Barry, how are you doing?
Man, I'm fantastic. Pleasure being on the show, talking about one of my favourite factions in wrestling history.
Oh, absolutely. This is going to be an absolute barn burner. Looking forward to discussing. Of course, Bash at the Beach 1996 was taking place on this date 25 years ago, which is the 7th of July. Looking forward to diving throughout the entire card. And as we go through the show as well, going to be discussing that importance of that heel turn, the significance it had on wrestling, potential ideas of what could have been due to the rumor mill, what they suggested. Apparently, Sting could have been the guy instead of Hulk Hogan. So I was looking forward to getting Barry's thoughts on that. And of course, just about the group itself, literally the importance of what it did in the wrestling industry, particularly as a whole in the 90s. But without further ado, before we kick things off and go straight into our first match, Barry, what was you most looking forward to when going back to rewatch this? Was it the Hogan heel turn, or was there any other matches that caught your eye?
The Hogan heel turn definitely has to be the thing that anybody who's watching this is going to be excited for. But also, the opening match was probably one of my favourite matches from 96 WCW completely, which is Psychosis against Rey Mysterio. I love watching that one, and that's what I was really looking forward to this time, going back and rewatching it.
I must admit, I feel the same. I mean, obviously, back in the mid-90s, I didn't have the ability to go and watch this as and when it happened. So I only watched this actually from start to finish for the first time, like last year during lockdown, because, lockdown, we had a lot of time on our hands, didn't we? So it felt like a good time to go and do so. And like you said, I was absolutely wowed by the opening contest, Rey Mysterio versus Psychosis, and I was really looking forward to watching that again. Actually, I've also got a bit of a guilty pleasure for Dean Malenko against Disco Inferno, so that's another match I'm looking forward to talking about later in the stream. But just before we do, if you do have any comments, then do keep them relevant to the show. Of course, what we're talking about match by match as well, we will give you a shout out if it's something to do with Bash at the Beach 1996. And the Wrestling Network is where we're saying that this is going to be a great show. Well, we really hope it's going to be. Thank you for checking that stream and hope that you are doing well, my friend. But without further ado, let's get straight things into it. And let's talk about Rey Mysterio against Psychosis. But just actually before we do actually go into that, because the show does kick off actually with a great intro package, actually showing how Scott Hall debuted on that famous May 27th Nitro, how a couple of weeks later Kevin Nash, of course, made his debut as well, the confrontation with Sting as well at the commentary desk, of course the power bomb that's done to Eric Bischoff at the Great American Bash. For me, looking at this really sort of set the tone, because who is that third man? The mystery was there from the off. There was really that buzz and excitement for the main event, and everything just felt generally important by the intro of this show. Did you have that same feeling?
The exact same. It also felt like WWF was invading WCW at the time. It was like these guys from up there are coming in to take over this company, like a hostile takeover, which was the tagline. But it really did feel like that when you were like watching it and watching that kind of open package as well.
That's the thing. They really were good at blurring the lines at that time, WCW. And like you said, the idea that WWE was invaded, because it wasn't kind of like when Scott Hall was time, it's like, what's he doing here? It's like, we know he's from the other channel. Why is he here? It's not like we've signed this guy. Maybe these are literally the outsiders. They played that role to perfection, didn't they?
100%. Like both those guys just they turned the wrestling world kind of upside down, didn't they? Like they started. This is kind of leads into the Attitude Era, the whole Monday Night Wars, and pretty much wrestling as we know it kind of today. Absolutely indeed there. And just to give a shout as well, the commentary team on the evening were Tony Schiavone, Dusty Rhodes and Bobby Heenan. They did make a shout very long that Eric Bischoff is not there, he's missing, but they also did make reference to the fact that the locker room is pumped up for the show, that they if they could have their way, that main event would go on first. They kind of want to get it over with. It's almost like pumped up, yes, but apprehension at the same time. Definitely, that commentary team was hilarious the whole night. Like the Dusty making digs at Heenan and just back and forth. It was just hilarious to listen to them. And obviously the way they were propping up WCW, they were one of the lines that made me chuckle was like, "Oh, the guys turned up at 9 o'clock in the morning, standing outside the arena before anybody else came." I was just such a. You would think the commentary team would be terrible because of who's on it, like the big egos, but it works and it's hilarious.
I absolutely love it. The way the dynamic these work together throughout the show, they have me laughing at so many different spots and moments, and some, unfortunately, that I probably will forget to mention during this live stream. But definitely, there's a whole package of the show. It's not just the importance of what happens at the end. It's just like you said, that sort of build through the show, because they really make reference of Eric Bischoff missing throughout the entire evening. It's just not just a one and done mention. And the idea is, well, that they want Eric Bischoff even just to give a phone call to let them know that he's okay. And yeah, I mean, the whole thing together is just hyped strictly for the main event. And like you said, these three do a great job in doing it.
Yeah, 100%. The whole show is kind of obviously for that main event, but those three guys just do a great show, a great job of getting us excited for it, and it gradually builds and builds and builds, and those three guys are just, they sell it, don't they?
Yeah, they absolutely do. Well, just to give the attendance for people as well that are interested, 8,300 were in attendance. The show was at the Ocean Center in Daytona Beach, Florida. And like we said then, we will actually go then to what that first match of the evening was then. And of course, we're talking about Rey Mysterio Jr. taking on Psychosis. We already said that this is a phenomenal match, and we are not kidding. Let me tell you, if you've got a spare 15 minutes of your time at some point today or tomorrow or during this week, go and watch this match on Peacock, on the network. It is incredible. Just the sort of simple moves, whether it's chain wrestling, whether it's the lucha libre high flying stuff, everything is done with such intensity and such perfection as well. It's fast paced, and it feels legit watching it. There's some really sort of fun high spots in the match as well between these two. Of course, both of them very young and of course very athletic and high flying anyway. They were always hitting moves to perfection, but back then it just felt like everything on this night just connected so well. We saw a very early doors West Coast pop from Rey Mysterio that didn't get the free count. We saw a Frankensteiner from Rey jumping off the top rope onto the apron, flipping Psychosis onto the floor. Psychosis, not to be outdone on these high flying moves, actually does he does one of those suicide dives over the top rope, and actually also hits a senton from the top rope to the floor as well. That's almost like a backward splash, and of course you miss that. That's almost like going to break your back. It's absolutely painful as hell. There's a twisting Isai moonsault, so don't get to say that too often in 2021, to the floor from Rey Mysterio as well. And of course his leg actually does hit the barricade as well. But to give us a finish of how this is, and I've got to thank Konnan for actually the details of this. He explains in the interview afterwards what these moves actually are, the finish of the match. Psychosis has Rey Mysterio in the corner, has him sort of picked up on the back of his arms there, and he's then attempting a top rope splash mountain. Make of that what you will, but Rey Mysterio counters that into a top rope Frankensteiner and then goes into the pin. I think, just to say very quickly, phenomenal.
Just probably one of the best openers that I've ever seen. That's why every time I've went back and watched it, I just sit there in awe. These two guys just out there putting on an insane show. And commentary, Konnan as well, but commentary done like a good job of explaining like the lucha style, kind of what it means to in Mexico and stuff like that. Because quite early on in that, the lucha style coming to America as well, especially on the kind of platform of like WCW. So it was cool to see, and these two guys just kill it, don't they? It's probably match of the night. It's not a guilty pleasure, just like a real good match. Like 50 minutes, and these guys just go, like, just do moves that even today would be like hard to achieve to get done. And you could take this match from then and put it into 2021, and it'd still be a solid match. It's just a fantastic show.
I think you hit a lot of the nail on head there of perfect analysis. Like you say, it's like watching your modern day Ricochet against John Morrison or someone like that, but literally every move is just hit to perfection. If you put this in today's market, like you say, you'd be none the wiser. And these two just do such a good job there. The crowd goes wild for this match. And yeah, like you say, I mean, Mike Tenay joins the commentary there, like you said, to explain a lot of that lucha libre. So yeah, it's very well put together there. And it's a great point you make, because obviously Bobby Heenan's having a real difficulty of understanding a lot of what's going on. And that's where a lot of the comedy does come into this match. But no, it's fantastic. I mean, to give a star rating out of 5 for this one, it's going to have to be a high one to just kick off the bar. Like you say, it's arguably one of the best opening matches to a pay-per-view ever. In fact, Dave Meltzer actually gives this a 4 3/4 star rating out of 5. So that shows how highly he rates it, if you like star ratings. I actually cannot disagree with that rating. I think this is almost perfection, this match.
I agree. I wrote down 4 out of 5, but it would be 4.5 out of 5. It was just great for an opening match for these two guys. It was just fantastic. It was just, you couldn't have done any better than this.
You absolutely couldn't. And the commentary goes on to say as well, these two have been wrestling for many, many years in Mexico. They've all had that feud since training in wrestling school. But actually, they've been in ECW having matches, but they've not long been in WCW. So these were two relatively newcomers. Believe it or not, Rey Mysterio, a newcomer. People today would not even believe that, would they? But literally, that's what they were this time. And this literally put both of the names on the map. So, and of course, Rey Mysterio, not long after this, would go on to win the Cruiserweight Championship of the world, actually. I believe it was in Daytona Beach when they did those series of nitros that were pre-recorded for the next month. But absolutely phenomenal kickoff to the pay-per-view here, and recommend people to go and check that out. But before we just have a look at my notes just to make sure that I don't miss, because there's plenty of interviews of the night, and like I said, Konnan, he does explain all those attempted moves, but he does say as well about his upcoming match with Ric Flair that he's ready for Flair. He doesn't have a group yet. Of course, he's a relatively fairly newcomer in WCW as well, but had already won the United States Championship. He did say if anyone from the group, from the Four Horsemen, do decide to get involved, that he will take them out. A good babyface promo, it seems, and Konnan, he was always good on the mic, and he was always fantastic. His English, wasn't he?
Definitely. I always think it's so weird going back and seeing Konnan here, because I'm used to seeing him when he was in the NWO, like that kind of rapper gimmick that he had later on. But then going back and seeing him here when he's actually got like ring gear and stuff like that, it's so weird. And you forget like he was such a good babyface, like on the mic and talking and stuff like that as well.
He certainly was. And like you say, I remember him with like, the rowdies. And like you say, it's none of that going on here. It's literally just pure babyface and just saying, look, I'm going to bring it and I'm going to win later on in the evening. And it does the job as a perfect babyface at that time. But speaking of matches that I'm not sure if I needed it in my life, but I got it anyway. And we're going to talk about next. We're going to talk about the match between Big Bubba, which of course was the late Big Boss Man, taking on John Tenta. And for those as well, it's the late Earthquake as well. This is an interesting story though between these two, because John Tenta only has half a head of hair. And of course, remember, people will remember him, he had kind of had long hair, but it was only on one side, because on the build here, Bubba had actually cut off a lot of his hair. There'd been attacks as well previously with what was a sock with silver dollars in it. So in classic style, this is a silver dollars in a sock on a pole match. And I'm not sure this is the fitting thing for two big guys to be put in this environment, really. It didn't look like either of them could be able to climb up there, but certainly did add to a bit of fun for the match. And just to give a last bit of note before we go into detail of the match, of course, but John Tenta was actually a part of the Dungeon of Doom before being kicked out. He was actually called Shark in that time. And then, of course, he had been Earthquake, Avalanche, Shark, and now he was just himself, John Tenta. Now, as we go into the match, there were a couple of highlights I will say from the match, even if it's perhaps not your 5-star classic here. I like the fact that Tenta used an atomic drop on Big Bubba, but instead of actually using a knee, he actually kept putting him on the corner of the top rope where the pole was. That looked quite painful, which was quite fun to see. As well, Tenta had one arm tied to the rope, and he was being whipped by Bubba by a belt. Then Bubba actually goes to get some scissors because he's going to cut the other side of his hair, but instead actually suffers a low blow instead. And of course, those scissors are perfectly used to cut Tenta free. As we go towards the finish of the match, neither of them realize that they can get up there. Bubba's on the offense at the time, and he says, well, Jimmy Hart's his manager. Jimmy, you're small, you get up there. So he gets Jimmy Hart to go and climb up the pole to go and retrieve the sock. Can't believe I'm saying that sentence. In the meantime, Tenta actually manages to hit a power slam on Big Bubba. So Jimmy Hart, none the wiser, coming down. Of course, why would you look down when you're that high coming down from a pole? Realizes then that it's actually Tenta that's there. Tenta takes a sock, pushes Jimmy Hart, so he's hanging on the pole, and then of course he turns and hits the sock of silver dollars on Big Bubba and gets the pinfall victory. Now, what I must say is, where this match lacks in quality, I do have a bit of a guilty pleasure for it. I did think it was quite a bit of fun.
Definitely. I think it's quality-wise, it's a terrible match. Like, it's, if you're looking for like a 5-star classic, go watch the first match and then just go into this with an open mind, because it's terrible, but it's hilarious. Like, why did you think about putting silver dollars in a sock on a pole, and the pole's like that extra large, that it doesn't need to be that large? Like, nobody could reach it unless Jimmy Hart climbs up it, and it's just awkward. And the bit that was even more awkward was when Tenta puts the coins on Big Bubba's eyes, and you're like, what? He's not died. What you do? He's going to be back tomorrow on Monday Nitro. What's happening? But it's like, it is a guilty pleasure. It's a match that, well, I don't like to go watch it, but if I'm watching this pay-per-view, I'll sit through it because it's just weird to watch. And it's like, why? Who booked this? Why did you do it?
It's almost like a Conrad Thompson moment of like, who booked this crap? Honestly, it is one of those moments, isn't it? But I like I said, there's a bit of a guilty pleasure to it, and I do feel that actually it was a lot of fun to watch. But like you say, if you are looking for your 5-star classics, yeah, it's not New Japan, and it's definitely not the opening contest, but certainly was fun overall. To give a few details then, just about this match very quickly, it goes 9 minutes. This match here, and it is a 1¼ star given from one Mr. Dave Meltzer. So, yeah, Barry, what would you give this rating out of 5?
I just gave it a dud, like just nothing. It's maybe 0.5 for how weird it was to have a sock on the top of a pole with money in it to hit somebody. I just don't get why they done it, but I'll give it 0.5 for that.
To be fair, like there's no logic in it at all, is there? Like you say, how can I even give this a proper grade? But you know, just because of the fact I enjoyed it, I'm going to go higher. I'm going to go for a 1.5, just purely because, yeah, when I talk about it, it's bonkers. When I watched it, I didn't hate it. So I mean, like, yeah, I will sort of say if you're up for a bit of a laugh, then definitely go and check that one out. It certainly has its moments. But we get an interview backstage anyway with Sting, Lex Luger, and Randy Savage. Of course, they are the 3 representing WCW in the main event. What I think is a nice touch as well. They've all got the face paint like Sting on as well. Savage says that he doesn't care who the third man will be. He will get hurt like the others. Well, equal opportunity. I really like that line from Randy Savage. It's one of my personal favorites. Luger actually turns around and says that it's a privilege to represent WCW, and Sting says he gets goosebumps of the idea. He's nervous who it's going to be, but hey, it takes over the 3 of them, and they are going to get the victory later on in the evening. So for me personally, looking at it, I thought that the promo was all right. It was like a typical babyface promo of the time, but I think Randy Savage, just literally the way he was on the mic, and just I just always love the way when other people talk and Randy just goes, I like it. I just feel like, you know, it's just a magic moment. I end up enjoying this a lot more than I should.
Yeah, I don't think it's probably not the best pay-per-view, but if you put no pay-per-view segment, but if you put Randy Savage in anything, you're going to enjoy it just because it's Randy Savage. When he just have a commentating what's happening, it's going to be fun. But
yeah,
it was okay. It told the story for like the baby faces going forward, and obviously before that big turn. But it told you that kind of story you were behind WCW.
Yeah, absolutely, and like the job is what it needed to do, and yeah, it continues setting up for the main event absolutely perfectly, and yeah, well, and then we'll go into what our next match is going to be. Then, of course, we're talking about I believe this is actually called the Lord of the Ring match, I believe, because well, judging on the basis of the storyline with this, Diamond Dallas Page won the Battle Bowl in 1996, which was the Slamboree pay-per-view. Now, if we're talking about things you shouldn't go and watch, that's definitely not a pay-per-view I recommend watching, because it is slow and it is quite awful. And without being horrible, they wanted to get DDP over, but I don't think they wanted to get anyone over at the expense of like one of these top main events. So he basically won Battle Bowl by beating mid-carders, and it's not the best pay-per-view. But anyway, I digress. The story going to this is that Hacksaw Jim Duggan is meant to have stolen the ring, and they go back and forth. And at this point, you know, the ring is on the line here basically for the pay-per-view match. So this match doesn't go so long. And I mean, as Hacksaw Jim Duggan seems to want to get himself back into the ring, he's on advantage on top of this point. DDP decides to kick the middle rope, which is kind of a bit like a low blow, and hits the diamond cutter and gets the pinfall. 1, 2, 3. Short, sweet, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. DDP wins the match.
It done what it had to do, didn't it? It was nothing. It was nothing special, and I'm not a big fan of Jim Duggan at all. I've never went out my way to watch his matches. If they're on the card, I maybe watch them. That'll be the time I'll go to the toilet or something like that. I don't go out my way to watch them. I know that's probably a fault for me, but I just have never got behind the guy. I don't know why. I just, for me, I'm like, every time he's on, I'm like, this is just awkward and terrible. And but that's just me. I'm happy it was over quick, and the right guy went over in Page, because obviously he goes on to become probably one of the biggest WCW stars.
He does indeed. And of course, that is by the assistance of the NWO at the start of 1997. And of course, at this point, DDP as well was a heel, which I think a lot of people, when you look back and think of WCW DDP, you don't think, oh, wait, this guy was a bad guy for such a long time before becoming that big baby face.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody forgets he was like the bad guy. Obviously, when he went back to it, like 99, 2000, we had like the insiders and stuff like that. But the period that people remember is when he was a face. But he was such a good bad guy. Like, it was just like that 96 part for the Battle Bowl stuff, which people shouldn't go watch. He does have really good matches like throughout 96, apart from that Battle Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, of course, I remember his series of matches with Johnny B. Bad before he went off to the World Wrestling Federation. Of course, that was later on to be Mark Mero, of course, for people to remember. DDP was a fantastic performer. He was great at getting people over, and he was good at getting heel heat as well. So yeah, DDP was very good at what he did. And looking back at this, I would say that yeah, I mean, this is a 5.5 minute match. I have to agree with you. I'm not the biggest Jim Duggan fan either, and I feel really bad in saying that because, of course, he's everything that's nostalgia and everything that's meant to be about 4th of July and stuff like that. And that's what this pay-per-view is supposed to be all around. And yeah, sadly, it just doesn't do it for me. It's 5.5 minute match. Dave Meltzer gives this a 1 3/4 star. For me, I am going to go lower because for me, I enjoyed this a lot less than the match previously. So I'm just going to give this 1 out of 5.
Yeah, I just wrote dud again. I don't know why. It's just when Jim Duggan's out and he's got that pole and and I'm like, oh, this is just so gimmicky. It feels like the early 1990s when like things still had characters, and then they were starting to transition. And I was getting into wrestling at that point, so it was those kind of baby characters were just like no. And I'm still like that to this day. So I think he's just wrapped up in a ball of this is the late 80s, early 90s guy for like kids, and I just in my brain I just switch off. So I'm going to just nothing, 0 out of 5.
I think that's fair, and do you know what? I think that's a really good representation of what Jim Duggan was around that time, because I feel that especially he's still like, I'm going through the network right now and I'm still going through Duggan matches in '98, and of course he's sort of really like the jobber on Thunder these sort of points of his career, and it's like here he's also, his job is to put other people over, and it feels like that gimmick, like you say, it's more designed for kids, it's more designed for what was the yesterday gimmick, and it's the transition and getting to the new gimmick. So in theory, the 1 out of 5 for me represents that they did the job right here, because DDP did get the victory, but they did kind of harm things a little bit. Duggan was doing this tape fist gimmick all the time, where he'd hit someone with a punch afterwards and then he would knock them out with this tape fist. And unfortunately, he does do that after the match, so he has to walk away with the glory still, and DDP has to lose some of the heat that he's got. So yeah, a little bit of a shame that ends on a slight bit of a dud. But do you know what? Overall, I don't think that this... yeah, it wasn't the worst, but it's certainly nowhere near the best on this show. I think that's definitely the best way to describe it. But yeah, I mean, we go then backstage, and we've got 2 sets of interviews. The first one's with Kevin Sullivan and the Giant. Of course, they're part of the Dungeon of Doom, and the Giant is the world champion at this point. And they tell the 4 Horsemen, which is Arn Anderson, Chris Benoit, the tag team match they've got later in the evening, that Kevin Sullivan, he's not the weak link, and this is his hometown. So, you know, we've got to keep an eye on Sullivan. He's the guy that ended Hulkamania. They made sure to get that line in there, which is very, very fascinating when you look to see what happens later in the show, because Hogan hadn't been around for quite a while after his rivalry with the Dungeon of Doom. So quite interesting that that was a little footnote that was made in throughout the evening. We go to ringside there, where Lee Marshall is with Arn Anderson and Chris Benoit. And of course, the main thing that's really to take from this is the fact that they are talking about the main event. But if one of the Horsemen does win this match against the Dungeon of Doom tonight, they will earn themselves one of them, of the Horsemen, will get a world title shot the next night on Nitro. So overall, the stakes are high. They're building up the match for later in the evening. Was you more invested in looking forward to that tag team match of the Dungeon of Doom against the 4 Horsemen?
Not really. I was not. The Dungeon of Doom just went right over my head. Like, I thought Kevin Sullivan looked poor, just weird. Like he looked like a midget Hulk Hogan. I know that's a terrible thing to say, but the yellow boots, yellow pants, that's obviously just Hulk Hogan is in everybody's mind. And the Giant was so green at this time still. Like, Big Show was just still... People were trying to help him get over more. He was just he just looked so green and awkward in the ring. But it didn't do anything for me. It was just there. And I was like, oh, that'll be cool when it comes up later.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, for me, I look at the Dungeon of Doom as pure wrestle crap. But do you know what? Sometimes it has its fun moments. But yeah, the stuff they did with Hogan and that earlier in the year wasn't necessarily my favourite stuff ever. But I sometimes always have a good giggle when I hear Kevin Sullivan on the mic, because I just feel to myself, he's got a way of conveying. He knows his character. He knows what he wants to do, and he does deliver it in a way that's sort of quite entertaining in its own weird way. But yeah, I have to agree. The Giant as well still very green at this point. So probably a tag team match was a good idea on this show, because it just protects him that little bit more. But enough about that. Let's go into what the 4th match of the show was, and that was a dog collar match. We didn't get too many of these in a tag team environment back in this sort of time period. In fact, you still don't get it today, really. It's the Public Enemy against the Nasty Boys. And if you're looking for 2 teams in WCW that were quite often involved in hardcore match environments, it's definitely these 2 teams, and they put here in the dog collar environment. If I've got my notes correct here, then Brian Knobbs is actually attached to Johnny Grunge, and Jerry Sags is attached to Rocco Rock. Yeah, this one, I mean, if you can ignore the cameras, the way it's presented on the TV screen, I think you can enjoy this match because there's a bit of a guilty pleasure to it. But you have a split screen where kind of you see two of them on one screen and two of them on the other, and it's not like a split screen down the middle. It's kind of like how our screens are right now. So, but of course, it's okay when you're trying to see our faces talking, but if you're trying to see action of what's going on, it can be a bit disruptive. But I'll go through some of the things that go in the match anyway, because it's certainly a lot of the weapons come out to play, including a battle in the beach, which I think is hilarious. There's surfboards involved. We've got inflatable sharks, trash cans, steel chairs. Rocco flips off a lifeguard chair, and then, of course, he goes back on it a second later and actually goes flying off of it, where it's pushed over by Sags. When we go back in the ring as well, I feel sorry for these guys when we come to talk about this, because Sags pulls Rocco off of the top rope. He flips to go on what's meant to go through a table. The table doesn't break. The sound just sounds like his back breaking instead. It's proper painful. Instead, after that, then they put Rocco on the table. Sags then wraps his elbow in a chain to do an elbow off the ropes to go through the table to make sure it breaks this time. It still doesn't break. So it's twice we have two hard moments on the table. And we get towards the finish of the match, and Brian Knobbs is actually, he's got Grunge over the top rope. It's almost like he's hanging him, actually pulling onto the chain. At the same time, then Rocco is thrown into the other chain by Sags, to the point it's done with such force that actually Rocco, his chain comes off completely, and Sags just gets the pinfall. After the match, of course, the rivalry between these two teams isn't over. The Public Enemy do attack the Nasty Boys, and good news for table fans, Jerry Sags does go through the table. It finally breaks on the third attempt. So yeah, that's pretty much the details of this match. It was wild, it was bonkers, it was chaos, it was fun, but it was arguably a bit messy as well. Where would you land on this if you were to go back on when you've watched it and say, like, is it for you or is it not for you, this match?
It's no for me. The table was the best part of it. Once it was like it's so awkward in that little beach kind of fight bit they done. But again, I was never a big Nasty Boys fan. Public Enemy, I enjoyed them better because of ECW and kind of stuff like that. But Nasty Boys they never done it for me. They just always felt like a cheap knockoff of like the ECW kind of tag team stuff. But as this match, it was just all over the place, wasn't it? It wasn't anything you wouldn't go, you need to go check this match out. It made no sense. It was the dog collars, I think, just confused the living hell out of everybody in it. It was like, why are we doing this with dog collars on? Then, like you were saying with the table, that was just brutal to watch. And eventually, when it does snap, you're like, well, that's good then. At least they done something right. But no, it wasn't for me. I wouldn't. It was like, it's weird as well because this is like the third match in a row that had like a weird stipulation to it. Like you had obviously the dog collar match, Jim Duggan having his thing, then you had the Paul Carson, whatever it's called, Carson City Silver Dollar match.
Yeah.
So it's like the third match in a row that have had some sort of gimmick in it. And then it's just like, this is getting a wee bit much. Just end it now.
Absolutely. And in fairness, we do go back to normal competition from the next match onwards, don't we? But yeah, I mean, for this one, I mean, it's not the best. It's not a technical masterclass. Things do go wrong. It's a bit messy on screen, but there are moments in this match that I do look and go, did have a bit of fun watching it. So I probably think I'm going to be the more generous on the grade here. But to go through, before we do, we'll just quickly get Mr. Dave Meltzer's opinion on this. And just to give you the time of the match as well for anyone that was actually wondering, it goes 11 minutes and 25 seconds. And Mr. Meltzer gives this a 1 1/4 star. I'm definitely going to be more generous, but I'm going to get your rating first, Barry.
Do you know, as much as I just put bashed on it, it was still fun to watch just to see these four kind of out of shape looking guys try and do sort of like what they were trying to do. So I'll give it a 1.5 stars because it was still pretty fun to watch, and Public Enemy is always good to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give it a 2 just because of the fact that I don't like the screens when they're like that, but I found enjoyment. So from that reason, I'm going to go a bit higher. And like you said there, yeah, things go wrong, the table not breaking, but I kind of took the like, for me, I kind of thought, yeah, I like this still. It gave a new narrative to the match itself that it totally wasn't meant to give. So yeah, for me, there were parts I liked about this. I'm going to give it a 2 star personally, but I would say if you are looking, there are better hardcore matches these teams have. I mean, Public Enemy against the Faces of Fear later on in the later times, or anything on Nitro they do with those sort of matches. The Nasty Boys, you're not going to beat the Stadium Stampede series they had, I believe, in '94. I think it was against Max Payne and Cactus Jack. I'd recommend that one a lot more highly. And even their matches with Harlem Heat, I think, were a bit better in that sort of environment. But nonetheless, we shall move on in the meantime from this. And we will be talking next then about Mean Gene being backstage. And of course, he wanted a word with the Outsiders, but he is stopped because there was security guarding the doorway. So literally he can't get through there to try and talk to Hall or Nash here. And does a great job here of just saying, like, I really... I want to find out what I can, but I can't find out. They go on again about Eric Bischoff. It's just that it's great to give this sort of purpose of the evening of, like, who is this mystery man, and continuing to build it up, especially with Mean Gene being the one to do it here.
Definitely. I think it was so... like they can take notes in this, how to book this show today, like how to try and keep a story running throughout the show, because nobody here is expecting that it is going to be Hogan at the end. But and plus the security behind them just look like they don't want to be on camera at all, which makes it even better because they're just standing door-faced and don't want to be there, which is just adds to it, because Mean Gene's like pumped to find out, and these guys just don't look like they don't even want to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. He can't beat Mean Gene. He's always so passionate with everything he's got, and the way he just talks on the mic as well is just absolutely superb. But yeah, it's fun, and I like the way that they build it up there. This week, in Metropolis is with us now, and I'm going to call that comment up. There we are. It says, "Afternoon, Jones. Great show as always. Thank you very much. I'm glad you're enjoying it so far, and fantastic podcast. And as well, go and subscribe to them on YouTube as well. They've got a YouTube channel on Spotify, Anchor, all the good stuff. To go and make sure to check out their fantastic episodes. But we'll go then into what will be the next match on the show, and another one of my guilty pleasure ones coming up here. It's the Cruiserweight Championship, one of two title matches on the evening. We're talking none other than the champion Dean Malenko defending against the Disco Inferno, and of course I've got to do that every time Disco is discussed on one of my streams. I promised that a year ago. I'm keeping to it, and I wish, for me, it's the story of this match that I really like, because Disco, you see me doing the dance moves there, he can't keep focus in matches. He's always been that guy. He's been more interested in doing the dance moves and selling his album rather than actually, trying to win a championship or trying to be invested. And Dean Malenko, the Iceman, the man of 1,000 holes, is just the perfect opponent for that, because he literally just go in there and kick the crap out of you. That's what he does. And literally for the first few minutes, you kind of thought, will Disco even get into this match? It's all Dean Malenko, high intensity moves, suplexes that you just feel like it hurts. And you feel like Disco's almost being put through the woodshed here. It's one of those sort of matches where you wonder if Disco will get anything at all. But he does get an offense back in. He has his moments in the match, including one that was like he hits his net breaker finisher, and he hits another finisher as well. And every time he looks like he's going to get like the win, he sort of thinks about doing his showbones. So he starts like dancing, goes, oh wait, no, I need to get to the pin. I just love the fact that he just has that split second where he remembers, wait, this is a championship match here. But as he does those sort of things, I remember Bobby Heenan, saying that Disco, he can't focus. He's desperate. He needs a manager. And of course, towards the end there, it's not going to be enough for the Disco. He can't do it. He can hang with the best, but he can't beat the best at this stage. Of course, he ends up submitting to the Texas Cloverleaf from Dean Malenko. For me personally, as I say, this is a guilty pleasure. I did thoroughly enjoy this match. It goes 12 minutes and 4 seconds. I thought it told a really good story. And Barry, did you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I love this match. I think it's the Disco Inferno. I've always, yes, it's a guilty pleasure for me as well, going back and watching it, especially here when he comes out with his CD. It's just so weird, like the story, and then you've got Dean Malenko, who's obviously going to put on a great match with anybody. I think he could go out there with just anybody and make them look good, and especially the two characters. You've got Malenko, it's all like bright colours, try to dance like in the ring, and then Malenko comes out and he's just straight-faced, just ready to do business and go back home. It tells a great story, and I loved this match. I thought it was really good.
I do as well. I will go out and say, because I'm a big Dean Malenko mark, I love Dean Malenko's work in general, so any match I'll always be there to say, yeah, I really like that. But I would argue and say this is the best match of Disco Inferno's career. I don't think that I can remember watching another match in the WCW run since that I can remember as highly as this match.
I would agree. I think the only thing that comes close to it is maybe when Scott Hall done like it's like 3 or 4 matches with Disco Inferno to help him get him over. But apart from that, it has to be the best match that Inferno has, which is insane to think because he was there for so long. And it's like, okay, 96, there's your best match, and that's you. The rest of the time that you're here, don't even bother.
I must admit this one. I know this is completely off topic, but one of my favorite. I'm going through 98, as I said at the minute, and Disco had a match recently with the Giant on Thunder, and this was the gimmick where the Giant was smoking every time he come to the ring, and you see Disco like on commentary, like, "Do you guys get paid to do this job?" Just the line he had there, and when the Giant comes in, he goes, "You know, you shouldn't be smoking, right? That stunts your growth." I don't know why. It's a cheesy line, but I absolutely loved it. I don't know. It's just the way it was delivered. I thought it was absolutely genius. But enough about that. Let's go back to the star ratings here for this match here. And Mr. Dave Meltzer, good old Big Dave, gives it a 3.25 star here. And I think that's a very, very good rating there. And I'm going to give it actually a 3.5 star. I really enjoyed this match. So again, maybe I'm just being generous today. I don't know. Barry?
I'm going to go for a 2.5. I'm not being that generous. It was Dean Malenko was the guy who made the match. Inferno was just there for the ride. When he just hooked on and went, "You take me in this cool roller coaster, put me over, make me look good, and that'll do." But 2.5 just on Malenko's ability to put a great match on with anybody.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a bad Dean Malenko match. So I'm a big mark for the guy anyway. But yeah, absolutely superb. And we have our next match that we'll be talking about next. There's not really much to say about the in between. So let's go to match 6. And not one I'm very much excited to talk about, if I'm brutally honest. We'll try and make this one as brief as possible if you're watching. It is Joe Gomez versus Steve Mongo McMichael. Of course, Mongo McMichael had not long joined the Four Horsemen. He comes out with Deborah McMichael as well to the ring also. And this match purely is just to try and get Mongo over. I think that just the quick and easy way is he wins with a tombstone pile driver. Gomez gets minimal offense in. This is a bit clunky. It's a bit messy in places, but this is just to try and give Mongo some experience. Like I say, he'd only actually had his first match the month previous at the Great American Bash when he turned on Kevin Green during their tag team match against the Four Horsemen to join the Four Horsemen. But enough about that. Let's go back to this one. And Barry, what were your thoughts of match 6?
This was terrible, wasn't it? There was like, who thought that we're going to do? We're going to put this up so high in the card. Just give them 7 minutes as well. Like, what? Why? Who? Like, I was sitting questioning this. I was like, who's writing this? Like, why did they write this? Why was it here? But we've done it in these retro reviews before. Mongo's not really had a good run. We were always kind of bashing these matches, but no, it was a dud for me. No.
Can I tell you that according to Dave Meltzer, you've just been quite generous. Meltzer gives this -0.5 a star is his rating on this. I, again, will continue with the generous theme on this particular video because I'm just feeling generous today. I will also go with a dud, but I'll go with a 0.1. I'm not even going to go to the quarter star just because both of the guys showed up for work. That's pretty much where I'm going with this one because, yeah, this wasn't good, ladies and gents. If you've got 7 minutes where you don't want to waste your life, skip through this one. You don't need to. Don't do what we did. We did it for your entertainment. That's pretty much it.
At least they tried. At least they came and tried, but they shouldn't have. They should have been better off just staying in the house.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I'll tell you what, someone that definitely shouldn't have stayed at home, and I thoroughly enjoy every time, is Ric Flair backstage interviewing with Mean Gene. Of course, he plans on winning the United States Championship tonight in his next match with Konnan, and he hopes to win the world title tomorrow on Nitro after, of course, he reckons that Arn Anderson, Chris Benoit will win later in the evening against the Dungeon of Doom. Ric Flair, of course, is just his entertaining best. Liz, of course, is at this point where she is with the Four Horsemen, bragging that she's got Randy Savage's money. And of course, woman is typical woman. Nancy, of course, the late Nancy Benoit, always this time was doing sort of flirtatious moves with Mean Gene Okerlund, where he'd get very uncomfortable on the mic. This was sort of a running theme that would go through WCW at the time, and yeah, I quite enjoyed this backstage segment. Not really a lot to talk about from it, but it was fun.
Yeah, it was. I'm doing the kind of reviews of classic Nitro from like the Monday Night Wars, so '96, and women's just kind of still doing that flirtation thing. I think I'm like 2 months before this, so she's still flirting around. Flair's been Flair, and this was just Flair being Flair, wasn't it? Before he went out to do his match, just give him some time to talk, let him put it over, because the guy can sell anything.
Literally. I mean, there's just the way he just talks as well. He can drag a word out. He just adds the emphasis on it. It's as nature boy can be. You could tell Ric Flair is loving life backstage at that point, and he was loving life. No wonder he was loving life, because his next match here was for the WCW United States Championship. Unfortunately, I wasn't so hot in this match. I am going to say that these two are very good in-ring workers, but this was a massive letdown for me, and I'm going to explain why very, very quickly, because at any given opportunity, as you expect, Ric Flair being the heel, he would kind of, it was more like a 3-on-1 match. Liz would kind of like get on the apron, distract the referee, and Woman would get physically involved all the time, and this played into the finish as well, and loads of rest holds in the middle as well, perhaps too many rest holds for my liking, actually, made it a bit of a slower pace, but Liz, again, on the ring apron, distracting the referee. Ric Flair also happened to keep the referee distracted also. Woman actually hitting Konnan with the heel of her shoe. Ric Flair getting the pinfall and making sure he gets both of his feet on the top rope for, I suppose, comedic effect here. And Ric Flair is your brand new United States champion. My personal feeling on it, one of the reasons I didn't like it is because Konnan had quite a lengthy run as US champion at this point, and I kind of felt it was a bit buried in this match, but it's quite a lengthy match. It's 15 minutes and 39 seconds. It's one of the longest matches on the card, and I must admit, I felt like it dragged for me. What about you, Barry?
The exact same. The heel gimmick thing, because I'm watching 96, it's been going on for months, like hitting people, women hitting people in the head with heels. It's just been going on for months, and I know it's still got all of this to come before I get here, but the heels is already annoying me at that point, but they didn't work together, didn't they? Know it was just two different styles. Konnan and Flair, good workers on their own, but together just didn't gel, and that's one of the kind of, two good workers don't always work together. That's it.
Yeah.
Sometimes people forget that as well. Like, yeah, you can have two great workers, but they might not gel together. It depends how they feel. And this is just that, but far too much interference for me. Like, it was just too much, like, distracting the ref, and like I said, the high heel, then jumping up on the rope. I was just like, there's just too much going on here. And then just kind of buries Konnan, the fact that he's had the United States Championship for so long and a really good run. And it's just like, no, we're just going to roll you up, give Flair the belt, and Flair doesn't need it.
No, that's the thing. Ric Flair doesn't need it. And I think as well, like, as well, Konnan, who's not been in the company for very long, taking on Ric Flair, the multi-time world champion, it doesn't feel believable that Konnan even stands a chance in this match either, which is a real shame. So yeah, it's disappointing when you feel that, Konnan doesn't stand a chance. And obviously, like you say, there are all those shenanigans that go on this match. It's a bit messy. It's to the point that Konnan has to ditch this babyface gimmick. He goes to join the Dungeon of Doom not long afterwards. And of course, famously, as we're going to talk about later on, he does go to join the NWO. But yeah, babyface Konnan is kind of finished after this night, which is a bit of a shame. But to go on the start ratings here, Mr. Dave Meltzer gives this a 2.5 star. I am going to be a little bit against the grain here from Dave. I'm going for 1.5 personally.
I agree with you, 1.5 here. It just never really got going. The interference was just too much, like too many interference, and then it just kind of never really got into like a good match.
Yeah, it didn't. It's long, it drags, it doesn't have the flow, and sadly, yeah, what could have been with two great workers, but just wasn't on the night. But Ric Flair, he's got one. Does he get his championship opportunity? Let's find out next then in match 8. We've got the 4 Horsemen. Of course, the representatives are Arn Anderson and Chris Benoit. And of course, they'll be taking on the Taskmaster and the Giants. And of course here, Arn Anderson and Chris Benoit making their way to the ring. They are attacked from behind by the Taskmaster and the Giants. And then Mongo comes out from backstage. Of course, at this point, he'd been offered to say at the Great American Bash to join the 4 Horsemen, this great big briefcase of money. That is used. He uses that briefcase on the Giant. There's a chase from the Giant to Mongo to the back. This leaves a 2-on-1 advantage for quite a lengthy amount of time with Chris Benoit and Arn Anderson on the Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan. And of course, Kevin Sullivan is in his hometown, so I guess he's playing the babyface role on this evening. The Giant does eventually come down to get on the ring apron and does eventually get himself into the match after a lengthy spell. Once he does that, Arn Anderson runs out of the ring to get away. Sullivan and Benoit continue fighting past commentary, and They even go into the staging on the first level higher up with the fans. A slam is done on there. The Giant at this point, we get the split screens again. Giant hits a choke slam on Arn Anderson, and we get the pinfall 1, 2, 3. Interestingly, though, after the match, of course, and this is probably where the most interesting talking point really comes from, is that Benoit and Sullivan continue, because, of course, their rivalry is only a month in at this point, which goes on to be a year-long feud. Of course, they had a fantastic match at the Great American Bash, which went all over the place, and I think it was like almost like a goes anywhere environment. Even went to the ladies' toilets with those two in that match, and they'll be famous to do that in multiple matches afterwards. But after this, Kevin Sullivan thinks he's got the upper hand on Benoit. Benoit comes flying off of this podium to actually land onto Sullivan when they go into the sand and the Bash of the Beach set. The beating continues then from Chris to Kevin in the ring, and it goes on to the point where a woman, of course, Nancy, comes out and begs Chris to stop and says, "You're going to hurt him, please stop." At this point, of course, the Giant comes back out to the ring as well, and of course, everyone leaves the ringside area. And of course, it is the birthplace of the beginning of, well, the storyline that you could argue that leads from the real life breakup of Kevin Sullivan and Nancy, which leads to Chris Benoit and Nancy. So I must admit, the ending of the match is fascinating story-wise, because they are blurring the lines once again, aren't they? They are almost suggesting the idea of real life coming into this, and we didn't really get a lot of that back then. But also, I feel a bit uncomfortable knowing what I know now of what is in future. But let's talk about the match to begin with. I think the match it's not great.
No, it's not great at all. It's the worst thing is like the Four Horsemen. Flair works a heel, and then the Four Horsemen, Arn Anderson and Benoit, work faces here. So it's literally just the match before they were bad guys, and then this match they're good guys, which makes no sense. But it's classic WCW, just not really making sense and putting stuff on. But it wasn't good at all. Giant, Taskmaster were just kind of, I don't know. I'm just not a fan of this time. The Benoit and Kevin Sullivan feud as well, which goes on for far too long. Like literally, they drain every little bit of like just goodness out of that feud. There's nothing at the end of it. But no, this wasn't good. Honestly, it was a low point. Like you said, the aftermath when it was like brawling and all that kind of stuff was pretty interesting, because it was real life and obviously wrestling life was kind of coming together. But apart from that, it wasn't worth sitting through it.
No, it's quite a lengthy match. What it is, I believe it just goes under shy of 9 minutes, this match. But like we said, the most interesting part is the aftermath of it. But of course, that means that the Horsemen, they don't get the title shot the next night on Raw. Giant continues, can get away scot-free. And of course, like you said, that feud with Kevin Sullivan and Benoit does actually go on for another full calendar year. It's not until Bash of the Beach 1997 that feud actually concludes. So who knows? One day, maybe we'll actually be reviewing Bash at the Beach 97, but that's not on this day. So we'll discuss that feud further on another day. But to give a rating then out of 5, before I give Meltzer's, Barry, I'll get yours.
1.5, just to be generous for the aftermath. 1.5. I'll be generous. I've not been generous all night, so I'll do that.
I think I'll go the same. I think 1.5, because, I mean, for what it is, there is a story, there is a narrative to the match, and the narrative is actually not bad. I just feel that for me, I don't know if it's one match too many, the placement on the show or something feels a bit off with this one. So I think the 1.5 is the fair rating. Mr. Dave Meltzer actually gives this a 2 out of 5 stars. So he is more generous than we are, which means we are just horrible people, Barry. That's pretty much what it's saying. So, that's his words, not mine, by the way, just so you know. But before when we go in towards the main event, we get the video package once again. Then that is played out with the outsiders and stuff, and who is the third man. We get, of course, Mean Gene Okerlund, who is backstage, and he says to us that he can hear a muffled voice. He's not sure who it is. He wouldn't speculate on what it is, but there's a muffled voice there. And he says, it's someone we know. So again, it's just that level up and saying, well, just so you know, when we get this person who it's going to be, you're going to know him. You're not going to know definitely who this person's going to be. And this adds, of course, we know who it is, so we can't really pretend it adds more excitement, but they do a good job in hyping it, don't they?
Definitely. If it was back then you were watching this pay-per-view, you would have been like, you'd have been popping inside your house. I mean, you'd have been like just dying to know who this is going to be. But I would have just replaced the last match with this whole little segment, that kind of talking about who it could be, and the video package would have built it a little bit better instead of I feel like you're going in a little bit of a lull because of the last match. You felt kind of like it's just so awkward, like you say. Then you go into this segment part here, and you're just like, I'm not really excited. But Mean Gene and stuff gets you excited for it because you can put over anything.
He can. He's so good. And I love the fact as well, Bobby Heenan's like bribed them and he's like, I'm not going to do your dirty work, your scam work. I love that from the pair of them. They just always had the great connection as well. And like you say, it's a shame because it's not even just the match there. I mean, we talked about, weren't really feeling Konnan, Flair and Mongo, McMichael as well, and Gomez. It's like there just was a few matches there. It just was a bit of a lull point as we get towards this main event of the show. But thankfully, we do come to the main event of the show, and it is a 16-minute match between these guys. But before we go into a lot of the detail of the match, the outsiders come out on their own. And I love the fact Michael Buffer, bless him, he's always has a monologue with every introduction when he's in WCW, and he's like, and as you can see, as I can see, there's only two of them there. There's not the mystery person. Who is it going to be? I love the fact that Buffer just makes a big hoo-ha of this. And of course, Mean Gene, of course, is aware that he's heard that third voice. He's stomping to the ring. He needs to have the interview. He takes the mic off of Michael Buffer and is like, what's going on? Where's that third guy? Of course, at this point, we see Scott Hall says that he is here and he's ready, and you know too much already. I love that line there, that last bit. You know too much already. Kevin Nash then gets himself involved here as well, and he says that the third man is in the building, but we're enough to handle it right now. So, of course, there's the cockiness that only two of them is needed to beat the three WCW members team. What did you think of this? I thought this was awesome.
I thought it was a great start towards the match as well, especially the outsiders coming out on their self. Then you've got that kind of cockiness, like you said. It was just fun, wasn't it? It got you excited for what's going to be coming next. But then one of the best blunders ever on commentary. I think it was Heenan says somebody was talking about Hulk Hogan, and he goes, "Oh, but what side are they going to be on?" It's like, why did you do that? You just ruin it. You can tell commentaries like, why are you saying that? Don't say that.
Yeah, exactly. He does the same with Dusty Rhodes as well, doesn't he? He's like literally like, oh, is it the person that's sitting next to us? It's like, it can't be Dusty. And it's like, well, I don't know who to trust at this point. And he says, do you trust me, Dusty? Because you shouldn't trust me. It's like, it's not me though. It's not me at all. It's like, Heenan's just off on one at this point. You could just tell he's just lost his marbles, literally. But in the same way, though, in pure character format, he's just so genius at doing it as well. So, no, I absolutely loved all of the build of this. And, of course, then we get the baby faces come to the ring as well, which is Sting, Luger, and Randy Savage as well. They all come out to Sting's music, all with the face paint on. And, yeah, I love that touch because it's Team WCW. Sting is like the cornerstone of what WCW represents as well. So, I do, personally, I really, really love this. And just before we go into the match, shout out to Martin Carrillo, who's with us in the chat. He says he's making a cameo to say hello. Hopes we're doing well. We are. Thank you for checking out the stream. You've tuned in at the right time, I say. You've tuned in right in time for the main event. So thank you for joining us here, and thank you to everyone as well that's watching along also at this point. But just to say, I mean, of course, we then know it's going to be a 3-on-2 match. Technically, the mystery person isn't involved here, but it quickly becomes 2-on-2 because the Stinger Splash is done into the corner, attempting to take out Nash, who is on the ring apron. Luger is on the ring apron on the other side, but Luger's head is held towards the buckle, which knocks him out. They both fall to the floor, but Luger is knocked out to the point he needs to be taken to the back. So this match becomes 2-on-2. From this point onwards, Hall and Nash absolutely brutalized Sting. I think that's a fair word to reflect it, to be fair. Cheating at all costs, any given opportunity, where they're doing the abdominal stretches, holding on to one another, cheating to when they don't have to do the tags and stuff like that. Pure classic heel heat here from these guys. But eventually, Randy Savage gets that hot tag. He takes on both men. It looks like he's going to take them out until the Nash actually hits Randy quite low. And of course, we mentioned the name Hogan. You've been waiting for it for the whole stream, guys, haven't you? And girls, I know you've been waiting for it. Hogan makes his way down to the ring. And like you said there, what side is he on? And Dusty's like, what are you on about? Of course he's on our side. He's not on their side. And of course, at that point, Hogan goes into the ring. Nash and Hall go out of the ring, and as they go out of the ring to look, Hogan goes towards the corner, turns around, hits the Hogan leg drop, of course, on Randy Savage, to the shock and horror of everybody in attendance there. And of course, Nash and Hall come in. There's high fives between them. The ref gets thrown out of the ring. multiple more leg drops hitting from Hulk Hogan to the point that they get a 3 count. So this match is just basically thrown out here. There's boos made, there's rubbish thrown in the ring. And Dusty, I love the line he says here, you can only look at yourself in the mirror. And Tony Schiavone saying that this has been coming since 1994. So, I mean, before we fully go into Hogan betraying WCW, let's just talk about the match at this point. This match went on for 16 minutes. I think it told a good story, the way it wrote Luger out the match very quickly, the way it played the numbers advantage back almost where it was an equal match where the heels thought, well, we were at the advantage anyway, going in 2 versus 3. I like that dynamic. I like the way it told the story as well from Hogan coming out. So for me, all in all, I really enjoyed this.
See, for me, I'd probably say the match isn't my favourite. It was just there to extend out for that period coming. Obviously, the history-making part coming. But the match was just there to extend it. The 16 minutes was a little bit too long. Could have been 10 minutes. Would have probably been better. That extra 6 minutes was just... It dragged in a little bit. But it made sense. They were trying to obviously keep it a surprise and build suspense. Getting people to feel maybe a little bit bored. Then they're going to pop a little bit more. But it was okay. The Luger kind of stuff, getting him took out, was probably the best part of it because nobody wants to be wrestling Luger at this point because he was trying to be babyface, heel tweener, whatever he was, because he changed so much just before this. But it was cool seeing the outsiders out there and just being cool guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you make a really good point because I would agree that the match does drag a little bit. It's 16 minutes long. I'm not going to give this a 5-star at the end here. You won't get 5 stars out of me from this, but obviously they wanted to drag the match out a little bit, like you say, to build that suspense, to build that feeling, and obviously just to really emphasize that these are the bad guys that have come in here. Like you said at the start of the video, it's almost like WWE has come and invaded here and what's going on kind of thing. They're really trying to heighten it up and maximize it to the point where as soon as that face comes down, everyone's going to turn and go, what's going on? So yeah, I think you make a really good point. It does drag a little bit, but for me, of the story and the narrative, the whole match, I really enjoyed it. And I mean, to give a star rating then, because Mr. Dave Meltzer, of course, he's always got a star rating waiting for us, hasn't he? He's given us a 3 out of 5 star rating. I think that that's quite fair, but I'm going to go slightly lower. I'm going to go for 2.75 stars for me because, like I say, perhaps more the narrative than the execution of everything perhaps is more what I'm taking away from this with real joy. What would be your star rating of this?
I'm going to go for low, so it's 2 stars, but it's the story's there, so it's total story, 2 stars. Ring work wasn't really anything. It was just quite slow and plodding along just to fill that 16 minutes. But so I'm going to say 2 stars.
No, I think that's totally fair. And of course, then let's go on to the meat of the entire video, the shocking moment, the thing that arguably changes the wrestling industry forever. Hogan betrays WCW, the start of the new world order. And well, of course, Mean Gene comes into the ring. He's absolutely disgusted with Hogan here, and he says that he's sick to his stomach basically with what has happened here. Hogan says, fans, you need to shut up if they want to hear what he has to say, which I think is a great opening line, because if Hogan's going to go out and be a bad guy, he needs to go all in from the off. And I've got a number of key quotes here that he says here that I think defines, that makes this work in an instant, because there is a thing that this could have backfired, because Hogan had been a babyface for his whole career. I do think I've heard him say in previous interviews that he wasn't so sure about this idea doing it. So you had to go 2 feet in if you were going to do it. And some of the key quotes then that Hogan goes to say on the microphone here, he says, "This right here is the future of wrestling, the new world order of wrestling." That's his first sentence from it. He says, "Came from a big organization from the north, these guys. Who knows that organization more than me? I made them rich." And he names Hogan. He says the name Hogan is bigger than them. That is one of the key quotes there. I've noticed that I'm on my own here for the second. Hopefully we will get Barry back with us in 2 seconds. Barry is going to be back with us now. There we go. We'll get Barry back in the stream. There we are, Barry. Welcome back to the stream, my man. How you doing?
I'm good, man. Sorry, somebody tried to phone me there.
That's not a problem at all. Not a problem at all. We'll go back to the quotes in the meantime and say the name Hogan is bigger than everything else in the old promotion. Billionaire Ted promised him movies and millions of dollars, world caliber matches. And he says, "I'm bored, brother. I'm bored. The outsiders are who I want as my friends. These are the new blood of pro wrestling. Not only are we taking over wrestling, we'll destroy everything in our path. And he says the crap in the ring represents the fans. He did everything for the charities and for the fans. The reception he got when he came out into the arenas, he says, you can stick it. If not for Hogan, fans wouldn't be here. He says that Bischoff would be selling meat from a truck, which I thought was a fantastic line as well. And he says that the wrestlers just wouldn't be here, these Johnny-come-latelys. What are you going to do when the New World Organization of Wrestling runs wild? And to close off the show, Tony Schiavone says, look, we're out of here, and Hogan, you can go to hell. What a great way to finish the show. This is so impactful for the 5-10 minutes that this goes on. So many great quotes as well there from Hogan. I absolutely love this.
Yeah, definitely. It's history making into it. This has started wrestling changing from that kind of good old fashioned character driven, obviously they're still characters, but like the kiddie characters being for kids and taking it into like the modern era, like that 90s era MTV style, and just kind of going balls to the wall instead of from being PG for kids with like teacher gimmicks and stuff like that. They just kind of go for it. Hogan just kills it here, doesn't he? I'd probably say Hogan's NWO run is better than his actual red and yellow run in WCW. Probably on par with his original WWF yellow and whatever, eat your vitamin brother run.
Yeah.
But I just loved NWO. As you can tell, it's my favourite thing in wrestling. It changed wrestling forever, and it's still talked about to this day, and people go back and watch it. Like the NWO Day is today on WWE's TikTok. We're doing like different wrestlers being in NWO, and people just love it. That's why people are calling for John Cena to turn heel, just because of how over Hogan got after it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, in that time in 2012, John Cena almost needed to do a Hogan at that time there. But can I just say, you said there that you thought that Hogan's run there are going to be better than the red and yellow. You're not alone. Unpopular opinion, Martin Carrillo says that Hogan NWO run was better than Hogan from WWF character-wise. I tell you what, I much have to agree with both of you. I mean, the thing is, with Hogan, I kind of got bored. I was always a bit bored in the 90s watching Hogan, because I always thought, oh, he always wins and he's a bit boring. It's safe, it's plain. I understand that was the thing that got him over in the 80s, but he desperately needed change, especially at this point. He'd been in WCW for 2 years, and I mean, he was carrying on the red and yellow, which of course he had also still had a kick-ass theme tune. Let's not knock the theme songs. Both of them were awesome. We're never going to take those away. But this change was at the right place at the right time, because Hogan was being booed. He was having matches with Brutus Beefcake in '94, which people were booing, and Dungeon of Doom. It was just the same repetitive thing you'd seen for year on year on year. And this happening here, it just changed the game. Like you said, it was no more of this cartoony stuff that we're getting anymore. It was real life wrestling. It was mainstream. It was the thing that literally took wrestling from being something that could be the numbers we get today watching it, to millions of people having to tune in on a Monday night. It was like Nitro went from strength to strength. Like, it'd gone to 2 hours. Not long after this, it went to 3 hours as well. Like, and then they got Thunder on top of it. NWO was just so big and so popular, and this was a catalyst. It was just the perfect start here, because I mean, from this point onwards, it was all about who else was going to join the NWO. When you get other members come along, the Giant was not long to leave the Dungeon of Doom to go and join them as well, and that was only about a month after Hogan then would become the world champion, almost like the replica like you've got behind there with the NWO belt, as he won that hog wild. Overall, for me, the NWO was just a game changer in wrestling. It was the inspiration. I mean, you can turn around the inspiration of stuff like ECW, and I think ECW has a big part of what played into the Attitude Era and played into what changed things around in the Guard. But also, if you look at like the main competition, WCW became the #1 brand. It became the #1 franchise in wrestling. And WWE had to look at WCW and think what they are doing and what can we do to match it and be better. They took the best of this, they took the best of ECW, and that's how they had to fight back, because without it, WCW would be the company that it would be around here today.
Definitely. I think this is what made wrestling cool again, wasn't it? Like, it was, well, I was about 5 years old when I sat him, so I wasn't really, I can't remember being 5, obviously.
Yeah.
But like, it was getting into wrestling. You had DX, the NWO, Sting, all that kind of cool stuff. That's what got people back into wrestling and done insane numbers. But I think that's probably into today's market as well. You kind of need something to give people a reason to care for it, make it look cool, instead of from just being lack of storytelling. Like the NWO, obviously it went too big at some points, which people can say I still enjoyed it when it had pretty much everybody in it, but it was just, there's nothing that can make you, that pushes envelope or you can care about in today's wrestling. Like story wise, you know a story's going to happen and it'll finish. There's no repercussions. It's just there. Doesn't matter. And hopefully that comes back in wrestling eventually. Maybe in a couple of years, AEW do an NWO thing or something. It'll be fun again. Just makes it fun. Like you care about it. And I remember being a kid sitting Saturday morning watching Raw, Saturday night watching the WCW thing they had on Channel 5 here in the UK, and just being engrossed in it with NWO stuff. And still to this day, as you can tell, I love that period of wrestling because it just got me into it. And Hogan kills it here, doesn't he? He puts himself over even further than what Hogan was, because he wasn't doing anything in WCW. He was just turning up and doing what Hogan was doing. It was like seeing like somebody who's like a famous football player turning up to play for like here in Glasgow with Partick Thistle, a team that nobody even knows, and you're just like, why is he even here? And then he does this, and it brings the rest of WCW up with him. Like, no, this is a place to come and watch. And then it, like you said, it kicks off that insane period in wrestling when 10 million people plus were tuning in to a Monday night to watch Raw and Nitro.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the thing is as well, the NWO, like you said, the repercussions and stuff you'd get. I mean, NWO from this point, Hogan and that we'd learn what would happen with Eric Bischoff. Of course, he was in the NWO as well. He was working amongst the conspire to get everything together. So then you've got the boss, someone that would be on commentary. They'd take over those commentary booths. They put everyone under fear every single week. They'd take over those, literally at the end of the shows, you'd see Tony Schiavone and Heenan running for their lives away as these guys would go off the show singing "We Are the Champions" or whatever like that. You'd get points where they get their own pay-per-view sold out, because WCW at that point didn't have a full calendar of pay-per-views, and when they did, one of them they brought in January '97, which it's arguably not the best pay-per-view in the world, but still it was a transition. It was something of difference at the time of what NWO could represent. They actually had a thing where they were going to take over Nitro at one point. They did for like an hour episode of Nitro where it became NWO Nitro. So all these different things they did, and yes, it would blossom into other parts like the Wolf Pack and LWO, and then of course the Finger Poker Doom and stuff like that, and we get our reincarnated version in the year 2000. So NWO would be synonymous with WCW throughout the rest of its history. And even when Hogan, Hall and Nash were to come back to WWE in 2002, they came in originally as the NWO. So it just goes to show that, a lot of things from WCW when it came into WWE was buried. The NWO didn't have the greatest run in WWE when it came in 2002, but they were given a stronger push than most. When you look back to that original draft in 2002, NWO was one of the top draft picks. I think they were like the second pick for Monday Night Raw. So they were seen as still, I suppose, a fairly big deal if you were to look at it at the time.
Definitely. I think as well, just the guys that were in it, Hogan, Nash, Hall, they changed wrestling, and they're always, even to this day, people still look at that with fond memories. If they don't remember it, like me, I was 5, so I'm not going to remember that, but going back and watching it when I was older is insane. The NWO holds, that's the point in what made wrestling cool again. That's what I always say. That's when it became, oh, this is a cool thing to watch, and tell people that you watch, and it wasn't just like, oh, I watch wrestling. Like the way it is today, you don't want to tell anybody you watch wrestling that much, because it's not that cool. Like it's that thing that I used to watch when I was a kid. That's what people always say. You don't want to be like, oh, I'm a big wrestling fan still, because it's a wee bit like, oh, you're just watching that kids program. Why are you watching that? It's like watching cartoons when you're our age. It's like, why are you watching cartoons? But I hope Hogan, as much as people or whatever he's done in all the terrible stuff that he's done, whatever people say, he changed wrestling. He is still going to be the biggest star in wrestling. You tell somebody from name a wrestler, they'll say Austin, Rock, Hogan, Taker. Hogan's always up there, and that's just because of that NWO stuff. He changed the wrestling world, and it's still changing to this day. Like, they've pretty much lived off the coattails of what the Hogan done then for like the past 20 years. Obviously, it's just kind of 2016 is when it started to take a nosedive, so I would say 20 years after it, you were still kind of taking I remember this, what happened back in WCW.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just me shouting about today's product.
Yeah, you have to get it in there somewhere. It has to be done, and definitely if you go to the NWC show, literally on YouTube, honestly, you'll get a lot of that sort of content. But it's great fun. I love being watching stuff on your channel. I think it's amazing. I reckon people should definitely go and subscribe to that as well. And the thing is, though, just before we close and wrap things up with final grades and stuff like that, obviously we said how game changing the NWO was, but there was a fear at one point. As I said, Hogan was a bit nervous about it. If you believe the rumor mill, at one point Sting was the guy that was going to be the one, and of course that could have played quite well in the narrative as well, because you look throughout the evening and stuff like that, all the guys had the Sting face paint on as well to perhaps give that illusion if he turned on WCW at that point, the franchise player had been there for many years rather than Hogan coming from that other company. Sting was the one that had been there since the 80s. Could Sting have worked as the leader of the NWO, or do you think it's a blessing in disguise that they went with Hogan and that was the right call?
I don't think it would have worked. Like, it's Sting's all, he goes on to become the Crow and that kind of gimmick. He ends up in the NWO Wolfpack, which was cool as well. That stuff worked, but it had to be Hogan because it kept it as that these guys are coming from up north to come here. These WWF guys, Hogan was always a WWF guy, so they came from there. He's brought Hall and Nash in to be there, and I think if it was Sting, it probably would have. We wouldn't be sitting doing this 25 years after it, talking about how good it was. I think it probably would have fell flat, just like what WCW would have probably done. It wouldn't have been as fun. But Hogan was the guy that the best pick, blessing in disguise, to get Hogan that and change the wrestling world.
I have to agree, and the reason I agree with that, like you said, there's purely what we got as the fallout. Could you imagine? I think Sting in the group could have worked, but I don't think it would have been as shocking and groundbreaking where it literally shook the whole wrestling world and the mainstream media that Hogan was a bad guy. Like, that was like the top name of the 80s, everything, because everything was driven around nostalgia in WCW of the 80s. We've got the likes of Roddy Piper coming in, Randy Savage, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, which we talked about in this video already. So it's like we have all those sort of names that come in there, and Hogan being the one that turned bad guy, and it needed the name of WCW because everyone questioned Sting. Was Sting the guy that was going to be joining them as well? People would turn their back on Sting. Sting had to then change the gimmick. He'd gone from the bleached blonde hair. He kind of already had the brown hair, but he got rid of the face paint. He got rid of the bright colors. He went to black and white himself, which was great narrative. Then playing that storyline, would he join NWO? Would he not? And then, of course, he would actually show he was pro WCW. They played that storyline out for like a year and like 4 months to where they got to Starrcade 97. So they did a great job of building that as literally the guy, the icon of WCW was going to go and beat these guys that coming from WWE that wanted to. So from that point of view, I have to agree with you that there were some certain points of this where it was the right thing that they went with Hogan. And it's a fascinating discussion. I could talk about it for hours with you, but of course we are like over an hour and 10 minutes into the stream already. But to give our final thoughts then of this, and we just to go with the pay-per-view overall, what would your rating of 5 be for this pay-per-view?
If you could just take how historic it was, what it meant for wrestling, it would definitely be a 5. But for the whole pay-per-view, 2.5. Given the matches, no, maybe 3, because the opening match was great, and then obviously Hogan making history was great. The rest of it just felt like it was just didn't do anything for me. But the opening match was great. If nobody's checked it out, go check it out. And then just skip to the very end. If you're on the WWE Network or Peacock, it's got it labelled there. So just opening match, very end. That would be 4 stars. But overall, I'd probably go 2.5.
I think that's a fair reflection. I've been generous all the way through here, and like you said, there's so many significance of importance, and I agree with the 2 things you should go and check out. And of course, I'm a guilty pleasure man. Go and check out the Disco Inferno against Dean Malenko as well. I love that match, and I'm going to support it all the way to the end. But literally for me, I'm going to say because of the significance of it, and I feel that people need to go and watch it, I'm going to go for a 3.75 out of 5 because of the fact that the importance, the finish of the show just is so groundbreaking. It gets you. I mean, even now it gets you talking, and it's just how great it was. It's 25 years later, we're still here talking about it as one of the biggest iconic moments in wrestling history. So for that reason, I can't ignore what it means to the industry. So for me, I have to be more generous, and I have to give it the 3.75 out of 5 in total. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. We will go to the comment very quickly we've got from Martin Correa before we finish up here today. It says the NWO showed in that time that factions can be a top draw for any company if you put the right people in it. And I have to agree with that. I think that's a very good call. And I mean, we mentioned the idea that John Cena should have done this whole shtick in 2012 in his own version. In fact, they even made a variation to it with the Firefly Funhouse match that they did with Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania 36. If you were to have that sort of style faction these days, I mean, Roman Reigns is probably the closest thing we've got to it in the modern era, doing it where he's doing this heel run now. Could you see someone else that could make this work at this stage, that could bring wrestling that coolness that you're talking about?
I don't think so, man. I think the wrestling's too scared to step on people's toes at the minute. They need to. What makes wrestling is they're not scared to do anything. You're out there. Everybody knows it's a work. They're out there, but you don't know how it's a work. It's like a magician, and they cause emotion. Everybody's too scared to cause emotion. There's so much stuff in the world you could use to cause emotion right now, and they just don't want to go near it. That's what's hurting wrestling. They just need to grow some balls and just go for it.
That's the thing, though. The more daring it is, the more shocking, the more shock value you've got, the more it comes in. As I think Eric Bischoff once said, controversy creates cash. And I think that's probably a keynote that you could live on. And I do agree. I don't think anyone could quite do that. But like you say, put the right people in it, you can make a good faction. It would be interesting to see how it would play out. But is there anything else that you'd like to touch on just before we finish off the stream today?
No, man, it was great being on the stream talking about obviously one of my favourite factions in history, but it's great being on. Thanks for having me on. Can
I ask you to show everyone the t-shirt you've chosen for today?
Yeah, man, it's I've actually got X-Pac in it as well. 6, whatever he was called at the time. And also my client gave me this today, which I thought would be cool. A little mini replica my client gave me. It was a good year for him, so he gave me that as a present.
That's absolutely awesome. I swear I need some more wrestling merch in my life, and NWO is somewhere that I need to start with because, yeah, I mean, they are arguably one of the biggest factions arguably ever in wrestling. That would be a discussion point, a great topic point for a video in the future, actually, is NWO the greatest faction of all time. But, yeah, many different variations, many different members, what you will, but this was the starting place. It was the birth of it. It was special, and I recommend if you've not seen it to go and check out the show. We've had a lot of fun talking about it here today. And just before we go, it would be rude of me, Barry, if I did not give a chance to plug your YouTube channel. So please tell everybody where they can find you.
Just NWC, Non-Stop Wrestling Chat, everywhere, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Anchor, Spotify, wherever you get your stuff, go find me and pretty much just watch me shout about wrestling, how I would book it. And I've got a new series starting on Friday as well, which is going to be a little bit more opinionated, which I know all you guys are going to enjoy.
I cannot wait for that. So Friday, we'll be checking out on that YouTube. And the link is in the description for you to go and check out. And of course, he does everything, literally everything. You've got interviews on there, but the classic one with Sabu. You know, when the news, I want to just show you off for a minute, Barry, if you don't mind. Do you remember in the dirt sheets where everyone was like, Sabu said about that Rob Van Dam was going to be in the Hall of Fame? That broke on his interview. So if you've not seen that, make sure to go and check that out. You've got Raw reviews, SmackDown, NXT, AEW, Impact, watch-alongs, the retro stuff as well. You said you're going for the Monday Night Wars. There's been 1993. They do watch-along matches as well. You give and ask for some suggestions there as well. We're hoping, looking forward to seeing a couple of them in the near future as well. I saw that thread on Twitter. Looked very, very interesting, the matches you were given. So, yeah, it's definitely worth your time. Go and subscribe to Non-Stop Wrestling Chat. It's absolutely a fantastic channel, and it is an absolute pleasure, as always, Barry, to have you on this channel. Always, always very thankful that you give up your time to go and watch the show, be with me, and spend a lot of time out of your day in life doing so. So thank you very much. And to everyone else that's watching, thank you for spending time out of your day as well to come and watch us talk about wrestling from 1996, 25 years ago. You've let us do that for you here today. Thank you for watching. Please like the video. Please share with a friend. Please subscribe as well if you haven't. Hit the bell for notifications. You can be up to date each time videos are released. I've been a bit draft crazy this week. I've done Superstars that should move from Raw to SmackDown, SmackDown to Raw. That video is available for you now. Also, NXT Superstars. Who's going to be called up to Raw and SmackDown? Make sure that you can go and check that video out now. And if you're interested in NXT from last night, then go to Barry's channel. Go and check out Non-Stop Wrestling Chat. That review is up for you right now. But that's all from us, mate. Thank you for watching. Have yourselves a great day. You've been watching SCW here on YouTube. This has been SCW Rewind. We've been talking about WCW Bash in the Beach 1996. Hogan betraying WCW. The NWO begins. And of course, thank you for watching. And we'll see you all next time. Take care. Have yourselves a great